Hey yo, what is up? Last week I showed you the Udarni being tested on the EU live server, and today we're going to take a look at the Object 259A, which is essentially the same tank as the Udarni. Visually exactly the same. Every bit of the tank is exactly the same, but the stats of the tank completely different to a Udarni. I've done a video on the 259A in the past, but we will revisit this tank just ever so quickly before I show you the other two tanks that I want to show you today, which is the K2 and the 752 Object. As you can see immediately, even the hit points are different. This is the 259A, 1450 hit points, while the Udarni has 1600 hit points, and the power to weight ratio on the 259A is 15 horsepower per ton, while the Udarni is 13.85, which means you got a little bit more mobility in the 259A. The speed 60 kilometers an hour going forward, Udarni only 45 kilometers an hour going forward. The hull rotation speed 31.29 degrees, while the Udarni is 28.16 degrees per second. Even the armor, the 259A only has 110 armor, while the Udarni has 150 frontal armor, and the turret 260 frontally sloped, while the Udarni has 300. So you can see that the 259A is more situated with mobility, while the Udarni is more a traditional kind of heavy tank, slower with more armor. But the 259A has a 420 alpha gun, while the Udarni only does 390 alpha. Penetration as well on the 259A, you can see the stock penetration is slightly higher, 233 versus the Udarni 221. The reload, however, is slightly slower, 14.38 seconds, while the Udarni reloads in 11.51 seconds. So it is really difficult to choose between these two tanks. Even the moving dispersion's so much different. 259A 0.19 dispersion, which means it will shoot a lot better when it's moving. The aim time as well, 2.68 seconds, while the Udarni is 2.97 seconds. Shell velocity on the 259A slightly faster on the stock shell, 1400 meters per second. If you look at the armor profile here, you can see this thing has a massive V-shaped hull. It is not going to be easy to pen this tank. You need to be shooting at the right places above the tracks. Anything shooting below the tracks on the sides, it's going to be difficult to penetrate the Udarni or the 259A. By the way, this is a tier 8 premium heavy tank. Next up, we are looking at the K2, which is also a premium heavy tank, but this is more of a traditional heavy tank because this is really slow tank, only 715 horsepower with 13 power to weight ratio, 30 kilometers an hour going forward. Really slow compared to the 259A, which was going 60 kilometers an hour forward speed. The hull armor, however, and the turret armor is really good. If you look at the hull armor, 160 frontally sloped, 160 on the side. The turret armor 250 frontally, 160 on the side and back. This thing is a lot of armor on the hull, so if you are side scraping, this tank is going to be really good. Penetration, however, very poor. Stock penetration is 203 millimeters. That's not really great, but the premium penetration is 270, so that is pretty good, I suppose. The moving dispersion 0.27, which is pretty poor, so you need to be fighting up close and personal in order to get the maximum performance out of this tank. Now, if you're looking at the armor profile of this tank right now, you can see that this thing has pretty good armor. If you look at what I have set up for us right now, if we have a 220 penetration shell, this thing is pretty hard to penetrate even with 220 penetration shell. Perhaps you can hit the front quarter armor. That would be a good place to damage this tank. But the weakest spot on this tank is, you guessed it, right on the rooftop above the gun mantlet. Why? If you take a look at the turret shape, you can see why, because this does look a lot like an IS-3 turret, very similar shape. It looks like a blob on top of a hull, kind of flat on the sides, flares out very wide on the sides, but it has the same kind of shape as an IS-3, which means the traditional weak spot is on the roof of the turret. If you shoot just above the mantlet, you are going to get great penetration there. But you can see here the sides are very strong. The sides of the tank, because of that hull armor 160 on the sides, really good for side scraping. But in reverse side scraping, not so good, because if you shoot just behind the fuel tanks here, you can see there is a flat spot facing you. So if you're going to reverse side scrape, you're going to be very easy to pen. Again, I'm going to demonstrate even from a distance. If you shoot from the rooftop, only 56 millimeters, you're going to be easily penning the roof even from a distance. So remember, if you meet this tank, just shoot it on the roof like you would in an IS-3. And the next most interesting tank here that I have is the 752 object. This is a tier 9. This is literally a Yo tank for the Russian, for the Russian version. It looks like the tier 8 American Yo tank. Obviously, it has one of these turrets that is, I forgot what you call it again. Forgot the name of this kind of turret. But basically, it works like the, KPZ. It works like one of the Yo tanks. It works like one of the French, AMX light tanks, medium tanks, back chats. Yeah, so the turret is kind of like connected to the hull with a shield, and then you have another part of the turret that oscillates. Yeah, this is what you call it, an oscillating turret. The turret itself moves together with the gun, so it does not have like a traditional mantlet where the gun will pivot from. Instead, it has an oscillating turret, and basically the entire top half of the turret, including the commander's cupola and the gunner's hatch, it's going to oscillate together with the gun. Immediately, you can see there is a lot of armor together with the hull and turret of this tank. 330 turret armor frontally. The hull armor is 195 frontal armor. Again, it is sloped, so you're going to have a lot of protection. But if you're in the tier 9, maybe you're fighting against tier 10s, then you're not going to get so much of a protection. But if you're fighting against tier 9s and below, it might be effective armor. 330 turret armor, that turret shield is going to be very, very strong. The only weak point here you can see is the lower plate, 200 plus effective armor. You're still going to be working well against tier 8s, which have, even with premium shells, 200, less than 250 millimeters of penetration. So you're going to be well protected against tier 8s. It's not going to be a problem. Your main problem, you're going to be fighting against tier 9s and 10s. That's when they're going to be able to easily penetrate you. On the sides, you can see that we have 140 of millimeters of protection on the sides. Very, not easy to penetrate even from the sides. You're going to have chances of bouncing your enemies here. But if you're flat on the side, then it's going to be easy pen, because it's just going to be 170, 140, 150 on the sides. Or if you're reverse side scraping, again, you're going to absorb a lot of it because it's going to be a lot of spaced armor and a lot of sloped armor that's going to be really good. But you can see there that 3/4, if you're reverse side scraping and if you shoot just above that mudguard you are going to penetrate, because it's just going to be 180 plus, less than 200 millimeters of penetration on the Object 752. But this is one of the more exciting tanks. It is already in the game files, and it might show up pretty soon, maybe as one of, because it's a tier 9, it's obviously going to be some kind of a reward tank or some kind of token tank that you need to grind or find ways to earn in order to get the Object 752. So there you go, 3 tanks that I have to show to you today: Object 259A, the K2, and the Object 752. Hope you enjoyed this video and took some useful information out of it. I will see you on the next one. Bye bye.